My name is Emily Sanders. I'm 32 years old, living in Denver, Colorado. I work as a financial analyst at a small investment firm downtown, stable, quiet, not flashy, but enough to make me proud. People who know me often describe me as steady, reserved, safe. I've never been one for chaos or drama. All I ever wanted was a normal life, a cozy little home, and a family of my own. And for a while, I thought I found all of that when I married Daniel Sanders. Daniel, 3 years older than me, worked in tech, calm, patient, with a kind smile that made me believe in safe love again. We married after 2 years of dating. A small garden ceremony at Red Rocks Park, just family and a few close friends. 7 years passed by like pages of a slow, tender novel. We bought a charming little craftsman house in Capitol Hill, one of those tree-lined neighborhoods where the leaves blaze crimson every fall. That house, it was mine. I had bought it after years of saving before we got married. It was solely under my name, my safety net, my anchor. From the outside, our life seemed picture perfect. White heavy check mark, a cozy home. White heavy check mark, 2 stable careers. White heavy check mark and a fat, lazy orange cat named Oliver. We didn't have children yet, but I was content, or at least I thought I was, until I realized I wasn't building a family. I was slowly fading into one. The Sanders family, Daniel's side, was traditional, to say the least. His parents, Frank and Margaret Sanders, were retired but heavily involved in community events. Every Sunday, without fail, they hosted a family barbecue in their backyard at Highlands Ranch, an unspoken rule that nobody dared to skip. At first, I loved it. Sunny afternoons, laughter spilling over the grill smoke. Kids running barefoot across the lawn. It felt like something out of a Hallmark movie, but slowly, subtly, it became clear. These weren't just family gatherings. They were informal court sessions, where every move, every word, every choice I made was quietly scrutinized, wrapped in the suffocating blanket of just caring. I tried. God, I tried. I baked pies using Margaret's secret recipes, even though I hated baking. I volunteered at Rebecca's charity drives, smiling through endless conversations where I never really belonged. I laughed politely whenever Uncle Joe teased, "Emily's so quiet. How's she gonna raise kids someday?" Every time I told myself, it's okay. Families are messy sometimes. But deep down, I wasn't messy to them. I was a stranger. No matter how present, how polite, how earnest I was, I never truly belonged. Family decisions were made without me. I heard about new investments and vacation plans after they were already booked. Conversations felt like closed circles I could never break into. And then came the helpful criticisms, disguised in sugary words. Daniel needs a softer, more nurturing wife. She should learn to let a man feel important. And Daniel wasn't cruel. He wasn't abusive. He was silent. Whenever I came to him with the bruises no one could see, he would simply hold me and whisper, "Don't take it personally. That's just how my family shows love." And I would nod and swallow the ache and tell myself, for Daniel, for our family, it's worth it. But inside me, brick by brick, the loneliness built itself a fortress. 7 years. 7 years of swallowing words, second-guessing my feelings, folding myself smaller and smaller just to fit. Until one Sunday, a Sunday that started like any other, when they called for a family meeting. A meeting that would make it painfully clear. I was never family to them. I was a resource, a wallet, an outsider with something they wanted. And this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. I still remember that Thursday evening like it was yesterday. It was drizzling outside. I was in the kitchen making a pot of chamomile tea when Daniel's phone rang. I glanced over. It was his mother, Margaret. Daniel answered in his usual casual tone, but something shifted in his expression, a tightness around his jaw, a deep sigh after he hung up. He turned to me and said, "Mom wants everyone to come over for a family meeting this Sunday." She said, "It's important." Something inside me twisted. Family meetings in the Sanders household were never casual. But I nodded anyway, because that's what I always did. I nodded. I complied. Sunday arrived, gloomy and heavy with overcast skies. We pulled into the Sanders driveway in Highlands Ranch. Normally, family BBQs were noisy, kids laughing, uncles shouting over football games, the smell of ribs on the grill. But today, the house was eerily silent. Inside, everyone was already seated in the living room. Frank, Margaret, Rebecca, Uncle Joe, and Carol, even Tyler, Daniel's younger brother, though he looked pale and sweaty. Daniel squeezed my hand as we entered, but I noticed he avoided my eyes. Frank, Daniel's father, cleared his throat and stood up. Thank you all for coming. We have a situation. Tyler needs our help. He paused dramatically, like an actor delivering bad news. Tyler made some investments. Unfortunately, the people he trusted turned out to be scammers. He now owes close to $90. 000. There was a heavy silence. Margaret jumped in, her voice quivering. It's serious, Emily. If we don't help, Tyler could be sued. Worse, those kinds of people might hurt him. I glanced at Daniel. He looked down at his lap, silent. I felt my stomach knot. Frank continued, we've talked it through as a family. And we believe the best course of action is to consolidate support. Emily, we know you have a house, no mortgage, no liens. If you sell the house, the cash could settle Tyler's debts. The room blurred for a moment. I thought surely I misheard. But no, Margaret smiled at me warmly, as if she were asking me to pass the salt at dinner. It would mean the world to us, Emily. We would be forever grateful. You and Daniel could always buy another home together later. I looked around the room. No one spoke up. No one said, wait, that's not fair. No one defended me. Not even Daniel. Especially not Daniel. The man who had promised to love and protect me, the man I had built a life with, was now part of the silent pressure weighing on my chest. Rebecca chimed in. With a sharp smile, you know, Emily, sometimes sacrifices are what family is all about. It's just money. But saving Tyler, that's forever. Uncle Joe added. You don't want to be the reason something bad happens to Tyler, do you? I stared at them, the hypocrisy, the entitlement. The complete disregard for everything I had worked for alone. I thought about the house, about all the overtime hours, the ramen noodle dinners, the second-hand clothes I wore through my 20s just to save enough. This wasn't just a house. It was proof that I could survive, that I could build something stable for myself. And now they wanted it. Not because they earned it, not because they deserved it, but because they assumed I would give it up. Because in their eyes, I wasn't a person. I was a convenience. I smiled softly. The kind of smile you give a stranger you no longer plan to waste your time explaining yourself to. Slowly, I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick folder. I laid it carefully on the coffee table in front of Daniel. Everyone leaned in, curious. Daniel frowned, confused. I looked at him straight in the eye. Here's something for the family vote. Inside the folder were a certified copy of the house title, my name, and only my name. A notarized power of attorney, assigning my mother as my legal proxy in case of any emergency decisions involving my assets. And most importantly, a pre-prepared letter revoking any shared financial access Daniel had to my separate property. In short, they couldn't touch my house. Not now. Not ever. The room went cold. Frank's face turned dark red. Margaret looked like she might faint. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. And Daniel. Daniel just sat there, still, silent. As always. I stood up. I love my husband. I tried to love this family. But love doesn't mean losing yourself to satisfy everyone else's mistakes. I picked up my purse. And before walking out, I added, calmly, you don't get to vote on my life. And I left. The door swung shut behind me. For the first time in years, I felt the weight begin to lift from my shoulders. Tone starts calm. Determined, like a storm brewing beneath still waters. There's a saying, you only truly know someone's character when money gets involved. I used to think it was cynical. Until I watched the Sanders family try to strip me of my home without a second thought. But I wasn't done. They thought they knew me. The quiet daughter-in-law, the agreeable one. They didn't know the version of me that refuses to be bullied. The next Sunday, I was invited, or rather summoned, again to the Sanders house. No warm greetings. No smiles. Only stiff nods and darting glances when I walked in. Daniel trailed behind me, silent as usual. Margaret ushered everyone into the dining room, where a heavy tension hung in the air. I sat down, calmly placed my purse on the table, and waited. When Frank finally spoke, it was with forced patience. Emily, we know last week was emotional, but family stands together. We need solutions, not drama. I smiled thinly. You're absolutely right, Frank. And I have a solution. I pulled out a USB stick from my bag and placed it gently on the table. Rebecca leaned forward, curious. Margaret frowned. Frank raised an eyebrow. What's this? I looked at them, calm and steady. Proof that Tyler's debt isn't from any investment. He didn't lose money in real estate or startups. He gambled it away. I pulled out my laptop, connected the USB, and opened a folder titled Tyler Sanders, Financial Records. Projected on the TV screen were bank statements showing massive transfers to gambling apps, cash withdrawals at casinos across Colorado and Nevada, a series of Venmo and Zelle transactions to shady, anonymous accounts. I clicked on an audio file. Tyler's voice filled the room. Dude, if Emily asks, just tell her it was a bad real estate deal. No way she's gonna help if she finds out it was blackjack. Margaret gasped, clutching her pearls. Rebecca's face drained of color. Frank slammed his fist on the table. Tyler, you lied to all of us. Tyler, who had slunk into the room quietly at some point, jumped up from his chair. It's not what it looks like. I was gonna pay it back. I had a system. A systemed T.O.B. Vegas. I almost laughed. I stood up slowly. You didn't just gamble, Tyler. You used your family's love as collateral. I turned to the rest of them, and you were all so eager to believe him. You were ready to burn me to the ground to save him. The silence was deafening. Then, like a dam breaking, voices rose around the room. Sophia, Daniel's youngest sister, who usually stayed quiet, spoke up. I loaned him $5,000 last year. He said it was for a down payment on a rental property. He never paid me back. Uncle Joe added. He borrowed $12,000 from me after claiming he got into a car accident. I never saw a dime. Aunt Carol chimed in. He took $7,000 from me to start a tech company. There was no company. One after another. The room exploded in confessions, everyone realizing they had been conned. Tyler backed against the wall, stammering, It's not my fault. You all put too much pressure on me. You wanted me to be successful. Classic. The abuser blaming the abused. I turned to Daniel. He hadn't spoken once. He hadn't defended me. He hadn't called out his brother. He hadn't even looked at me. Daniel, I said, voice trembling not with fear, but with rage, you knew. He opened his mouth and closed it. And in that silence, I found all the answers I needed. I closed my laptop. You can keep your Sunday BBQs. You can keep your votes. You can keep your broken loyalty. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. Not Margaret. Not Frank. Not Rebecca. Not Daniel. Not even Tyler. As I stepped outside into the crisp Denver air, I realized, sometimes families don't fall apart because of betrayal. They fall apart because betrayal reveals what was already broken. And I was done patching things that were never whole to begin with. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Tone soft. Hollow, setting the emotional aftermath. That night, I didn't go home. I drove around Denver for nearly an hour, headlights slicing through the rain, windshield wipers struggling to keep up. I didn't have a destination. I didn't even have thoughts. Just a numb, echoing silence in my chest. I parked in a quiet lot near Cherry Creek and sat there, staring at the black sky. No music. No phone. Just me and the raw ache of realizing that love wasn't always enough to protect you. Because sometimes, love wasn't love at all. It was just convenience in a prettier package. Close to midnight, my phone buzzed. A text. It was from Sophia, Daniel's younger sister. Normally shy, reserved. Tonight, she was brave. The message was short. Are you free to talk? There's more you need to know about Daniel. I stared at the screen, felt my stomach clench, and typed back, tell me. Sophia didn't call. She sent screenshots. One after another after another. bank transfers, private messages, Venmo payments, emails. The story unraveled faster than I could read. And with every word, every pixel, I felt the last pieces of my marriage crack apart. It turned out, Daniel wasn't just a bystander. He wasn't a poor, naive brother caught between loyalty and love. He was in on it. Months ago, Tyler had pitched Daniel a sure-win crypto investment. Daniel, blinded by desperation and pride, agreed. He borrowed $20,000 from our joint savings account, the one we were supposed to be saving to remodel the house. And when the investment crashed, instead of confessing to me, he doubled down. He started funneling more money to Tyler under fake invoices, home repairs that never happened, emergency loans that weren't real, business expenses that existed only on paper. All of it, built on lies, built on my trust. And it wasn't just money. Sophia told me something else. Something worse. Daniel once got into trouble at his old company, she wrote. Fraud allegations. Tyler covered for him, took the blame. Ever since, Daniel felt like he owed Tyler anything, including me, my house, my future. I sat there in the car, staring at my trembling hands. I remembered the time Daniel told me we needed $10,000 for a roof repair. He showed me a polished invoice. He reassured me. I believed him. Because when you love someone, you don't double-check their words. You just believe. I thought the greatest pain would come from strangers betraying me. I was wrong. The greatest pain came from realizing the man sleeping beside me every night was never standing beside me at all. I wiped my face, not from tears, but from the sweat of anger burning under my skin. I wasn't crying. I wasn't mourning. I was planning. I texted Sophia back, send me everything. Every file. Every text. Every transfer. Within minutes, my inbox overflowed. Evidence. Proof. Receipts. Enough to sink Daniel, Tyler, and the entire charade they had built around me. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. But I knew one thing. I would no longer be the quiet wife who smiled while being bled dry. Daniel made his choice. And now, I was going to make mine. Tone opens cold, sharp, calm before the storm. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I planned. Quietly. Carefully. Ruthlessly. I spent the entire week gathering everything Sophia had sent me, every transfer, every fake invoice, every lie wrapped in polished words. By Saturday night, my case was airtight. Sunday morning, Margaret texted, family dinner tonight at 6. Everyone will be there. It's time we cleared the air. The irony almost made me laugh. Cleared the air? They had no idea what was coming. I texted back, I'll be there. And yes, we will be clearing everything. At 6 p.m. sharp, I pulled into the Sanders driveway. The house looked the same. The manicured lawn, the white porch swing, the smell of roast beef from the kitchen. Fake peace covering real rot. Everyone was already seated at the long dining table. Frank at the head, somber. Margaret pretending to smile. Rebecca glancing nervously at Daniel. Daniel sitting stiffly, hands clenched under the table. Tyler slouched in a chair, pretending boredom. I sat down calmly, placing my leather folder on the table. I waited until the food was served, the wine poured, the fake laughter attempted. Then I stood up. The room froze. Before we eat, I said, voice clear and steady, I have a few things to share. I pulled out the first document. White heavy checkmark, a copy of the joint bank account Daniel secretly opened with Tyler, used to funnel our savings. I laid it flat on the table. Then another. White heavy checkmark emails between Daniel and Tyler discussing how to forge home repair invoices to justify withdrawals. Then another. White heavy checkmark records showing money moved from my separate property savings without my consent into Tyler's gambling accounts. Frank's face turned purple. Margaret gasped, covering her mouth with a napkin. Rebecca whispered, "Oh my God," over and over. Tyler tried to bolt from his chair, but Frank barked, "Sit down, Daniel." He just stared at me. Not angry. Not pleading. Just hollow. Empty. I turned to Daniel. "You didn't just betray me. You sold me. You used my love as collateral for your brother's debts. You lied, you stole, and you expected me to keep smiling through it." Daniel opened his mouth, voice cracking. I didn't know what else to do. I was trapped. I shook my head slowly. No, you weren't trapped. You were just selfish. From my bag, I pulled out the final envelope. White heavy check-marked divorce papers. Already signed. Already filed. I placed them neatly in front of Daniel. You have 48 hours to sign. If not, I proceed with a contested filing with all of this. I gestured at the evidence. Attached as exhibits. Daniel's hand trembled. No one said a word. Not Frank. Not Margaret. Not Rebecca. Not Tyler. Because there was nothing left to say. I picked up my purse, straightened my shoulders, and said softly, love doesn't mean destroying yourself to save someone else. And family doesn't mean obedience at all costs. I walked out without looking back. Behind me, the Sanders family collapsed into shouting. In front of me, the cool night air of Denver felt cleaner than it had in years. As I drove away, I realized freedom doesn't always come with a fanfare. Sometimes, it comes quietly in the form of a door closing behind you. And for the first time in years, I wasn't running away. I was finally walking toward myself. Tone soft. Hopeful, like a fresh sunrise. 2 weeks later, I officially closed the chapter on my marriage. The divorce papers were finalized. Daniel signed without protest. Maybe he knew there was no fight left to fight. Maybe he finally realized he had lost me long before I walked out that door. I moved out of our old house. Instead of buying something big or flashy, I rented a small but beautiful apartment in Cherry Creek, 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, sunlight pouring through every window. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was peace. Every morning, I brewed my coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. No anxiety, no dread, just breathing, just being. I adopted a rescue dog, a scrappy little golden retriever mix with big brown eyes. I named him Brave, because that's what I needed to be, and what I had become. Brave and I spent weekends hiking in the Rockies, wandering through parks, lounging in cafes. There were still moments when loneliness crept in, when the memories of betrayal tried to pull me under. But every time, I reminded myself, you didn't lose a family. You lost a cage. And that was freedom. For a long time, I thought love meant endurance. That the more you suffered for someone, the deeper your love was. But now I know, real love doesn't ask you to bleed to prove your loyalty. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink yourself into nothingness. If you're listening to this, and you're standing at the edge, between staying in a place that slowly kills you, or stepping into the unknown that might save you, please know, you are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not weak for walking away. You are not wrong for wanting peace. You don't need anyone's permission to be free. You don't need a family vote. You don't even need closure. Sometimes, all you need is the courage to open the door and walk through it. Some days, Brave and I would drive up to Boulder. I'd sit on a grassy hill, watching the sunset set the mountains on fire with gold and orange. And in those moments, with the wind in my hair and my dog's head resting on my lap, I knew I was whole again. Not because someone saved me, not because someone stayed, but because I chose myself. Finally, fully, fearlessly. Maybe one day I'll fall in love again. Maybe not. But either way, I'll never forget. Family isn't the people you're born into. It's the people who choose you, respect you, and stand beside you without asking you to sacrifice yourself. And from now on, I choose me, always.